Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today for episode 19 of Friday Book Bites, and I'm very pleased to have joined me today the wonderful author Annie Seaton. Hi Annie, thank you for joining me today.
Hi Sandy, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, and we've known each other I think online for a little while, but we met in person for the very first time when you were my interview partner for my debut novel back in 2018. So I'm so thrilled to have you here. Thank you.
It's good to be here.
Now, we're going to be talking today about Australian rural fiction, but before we jump into that conversation, I'm going to pop up the details of the giveaway just so I don't forget to do it later. So for anyone who leaves a comment or asks a question, whether that's during the live stream right now or if you're watching this back later up until midday Sydney time on Saturday, you will go into the draw to win a copy of Annie's book, Whitsunday Dawn, which I've got a copy of here, which is a wonderful, wonderful tale. But as I said, we're here to talk about rural fiction today, and it's a very popular genre, whether it's rural romance or rural noir or simply stories that are set in small Australian towns. And I wanted to ask you, Annie, why you think they're such popular stories.
I think there's two reasons. I think back in our childhoods and back in those times that we see as those wonderful times before we grew up and life intruded with career and racing around, that a rural town to a lot of people gives that quiet, slow pace of life. So it is this imaginary perception, I think, of what people have of rural life, because as we know from all of the books that we read, it's certainly not like that. You know, there's issues and emotional problems and things like that. The other thing is, and what I like to do with my books, is that through reading rural fiction, people who can't get out into many places in Australia can actually experience an armchair journey of rural areas.
And I think we know at the moment how important those armchair journeys are with the restrictions on our travel, even within our own country right now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The other side to this, obviously it's very popular with readers, is that for us as writers, why do you think it's important that we tell these stories set in these tiny Australian towns?
Well, what I love to do and how I've started with my bigger books in print like Undara, Kakadu Sunset, Daintree, I start with a landscape, and sometimes I'll just be driving along, we'll go and visit somewhere, we'll be on the way to somewhere, and I'll find a landscape that really resonates with me as a setting. And then I'll do a lot of research and I'll find an issue that is particular to that landscape. For example, Kakadu Sunset was looking at coal seam gas mining in a rural area. The Daintree was about wildlife smuggling. Diamond Sky was about a diamond heist in a large diamond mine. Whitsunday Dawn was about, God forbid if anyone wanted to build a coal loader up in the Whitsunday Islands. And Undara was about a gold mine impacting on a cattle property that was doing it tough economically anyway. So I bring an issue into the setting, and my publisher has tagged me as an eco-adventure author, which I find interesting. Some of the books have romantic elements. The last one, Undara, was more about an exploration of grief and tragedy than romance. So that's within the rural setting. Then the third thing I do is populate it with my characters and, of course, give them an issue. But the main character of all of my books is the rural setting.
Mm-hmm. And why is it, do you think, that that resonates? Because I often hear this phrase when people talk about the real Australia, and I've always wondered what that actually means. You know, for some people it's the gritty underbelly of Sydney, and I mean I live in Sydney and I've got no gritty underbelly, I can tell you that.
Same as Melbourne, you know. What was the name of that television show? It was Underbelly, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, as I said before, there's this perception of this bucolic country atmosphere where everything is sweet and nice, and it is this lovely place that people want to go because it's the country. And as you say, we all know that, it's not the city versus the country, it's the people that are there and the things that are happening that make a place the way it is. But of course, the benefit of the country, and I mean, you can't disparage Sydney or anything like that because we've got the beautiful harbour and the beautiful beaches and the beautiful mountains. But I think a lot of people see the rural settings as something beautiful, possibly because it's outside of their experiences. And, country towns and rural settings vary. You've got the dry, dusty outback, the sorts of places that Jane Harper and Chris Hammer write into their books, or some of their books. And then you've got my latest series, my Pentecost Island series, is rural. It's not in a town, but it's in a beautiful island, again, small rural setting. So I think people see the beauty of the landscape through this rural fiction.
Yeah, and I think it's something that is really wonderful about writing within this genre is that there's such a depth and breadth of possibility. As you said, it could be outback, it could be a small town, it could be a coastal setting, it could be islands. And I think as authors, it's a wonderful landscape in which to mine.
Oh, people say to me, where do you get your ideas and how can you think of so many books? And I said, there are so many books in my head because of the beautiful settings that I want to visit and I want to write. And this year's been very limited. Luckily, we did the centre last year, which is my next book with HarperCollins. There are so many landscapes out there, and we've got such a diverse and wide country, from the mountains of Tasmania and the lakes to the dry, dusty red outback to the red centre Uluru, up to the Daintree rainforests and the wet north up around Darwin. I just want to write a book that's set everywhere.
Now, something that you've done, which I think highlights just how important this genre is, both for writers and for readers, is that you've set up a Australian rural fiction website and a Facebook page. And I'm just going to pop those details up now. So that's the website at the bottom and the Facebook page at the top. And as you can see, there's 2,500 members of this Facebook page that showcases Australia and New Zealand rural fiction. You set this up with another rural fiction writer, Darry Fraser. What was the impetus for the two of you to do that?
I think that we needed to provide a place for authors to get together and showcase their rural books. There were a few websites and a few places where authors sort of have to pay to be a part of it. And we thought, let's offer this service. We don't charge our authors anything. Occasionally I think once we've asked them to throw in $5 towards maintaining the website domain. But luckily, I've got very good technology skills, having my technology background from my education career. So for me to knock up a website or load some covers to a Facebook page or get a group together, it's a very quick process for me. And Darry does all of the administration. She sends out all of the emails and she puts up posts on the page, which is a great one last week. Where are you from? And what's your favourite Australian rural fiction book? We quickly changed that because no one was prepared to say what their favourite book was. So we said, what's the last Australian rural fiction book that you've read?
But too hard to choose.
The fabulous thing is that the website and the Facebook page are showcasing our Australian, and we've now opened it up to New Zealand authors as well. But it's a fantastic forum for readers to interact with authors, and it's been a really happy, wonderful Facebook group. I don't think I've ever had to moderate it and take anything nasty off it. It's just people are so excited when they'll mention a book and the author will come in and talk to them. The reader go, oh my God, the author's spoken to me. So it's been amazing. Like, it grew from nothing to about 1,000 in the first couple of weeks. And as you said, we're now, well, I think nearly 2,500 members, and I'm approving people, probably 2 or 3 people every day asked to join, and they're all bona fide Australian readers.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I've been a part of that group, I think, since almost the beginning, and it's a really special place for us to be. Now, I do have a burning question that I want to ask you, but before I do that, there are some questions coming through from the audience. So we'll start with those. And the boys from Happy Valley have a question for you, Annie. Are you writing any more books in the same genre like Whitsunday Dawn and Undara? 2 fantastic reads.
What a great question, guys. You'll be very pleased to know that my next book out, and unfortunately with the way publishers are at the moment, it's been slightly delayed due to COVID, but my book is called Osprey Reef. It's another book that is set up on the Great Barrier Reef, but this time it goes 200 kilometres offshore out to a place called Osprey Reef. A lot of it is set in the Whitsundays, and the historical version of the historical timeline is set in Mackay in the 1930s, and it's about the development of the harbour and the seawall in Mackay in the 1930s. Of course, there is a mystery with our heroine, our hero, that remains unsolved until our contemporary strand, where the heroine's, the 1930s heroine's great-granddaughter is a commercial sea captain. And she's actually the skipper of the boat that most of the book is set on. And my publisher, when I sent it off to her probably 8 or 10 months ago now, said to me it was my best one yet. So that's really great to hear from your publisher.
Yeah, so that is very good to hear.
That's the next book. And in terms of Undara, last winter we went out to the Red Centre researching my contracted book with HarperCollins, which will be called East of Alice. And it, again, is a dual timeline, historical, exploring contemporary issues, mystery, suspense, possibly a bit of murder, and a historical strand about the discovery of rubies at a place called Ruby Gap in the 1880s. And again, the unsolved mystery comes to contemporary times. So that's a definitive yes to both of those questions about those books.
I'm sure Craig and Phil will be very happy to hear that. Now, Debbie's got a question here, and you did sort of answer this before. She wants to know which comes first for you, character or setting.
Okay, setting. Landscape, who becomes to me, my landscapes are a character in their own right. I've had quite a few reviewers have actually used that phrase, that my landscape becomes a live character for them. So landscape, then issue, then characters, then the characters' issues. So, and I'm one of these terrible authors who doesn't plan anything. It's just a whole mass of ideas and actions and plot, and it all comes together into a story.
I like those kind of authors because I'm one of those as well.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, who needs to plan?
And I do plan. One of my Pentecost Island books that I'm writing, or one I wrote a couple of books ago, I was really running out of time, and I thought, well, I'll sit down and organise what I'm going to write. And I planned out my chapters, wrote it all down, never looked at it. Wasted a couple of hours doing that when I could have been writing.
Oh dear. Trish would like to know when is book 4 of the Porter Sisters being released?
Trish is one of the readers who said to me there has to be a book 4 in the Porter Sisters. Now, the Porter Sisters series, Kakadu Sunset, Daintree and Diamond Sky, that were originally published with Pan Macmillan. I have since got the rights back, and I have independently published them myself, and they are just going gangbusters at the moment. So Trish and another reader, Maria up in Rockhampton, Maria just begged me. She said, I want to read more about the Porter Sisters, and I filed that away. And then, I don't know what caused it. I just had this little inspiration moment one day, and I thought, oh, yes, I know how I could write a 4th Porter Sisters book. So to answer Trish's question, that will be out, I think it's about the 25th of March next year.
Excellent.
I've already got a lovely cover, and the blurb's up on Amazon, so she can read what it's all about.
Excellent, excellent. Fiona has left a comment that she's definitely an armchair traveller at the moment, like we all are, Fiona. And
Yeah.
she thinks that you are correct, Annie, that the rural novels evoke memories of a time when everyone knew everyone and we looked out for each other, unlike the cities where we don't even know our neighbours. And I think that's a really interesting point. During COVID, stories set in these rural towns actually did quite well. During lockdown, they were the stories that people were loving to read. And I do wonder if it is that because of that sense of community and that sense of looking out for one another.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And as I'm writing each of my stories, I really focus on my secondary characters and even sometimes my minor characters that might just come in and out for a little while to get that sense of community going and that sense of caring. And a couple of my characters, one in Kakadu Sunset and Rocky in Diamond Sky, I had readers email me to tell me that how much they love those two characters, and they played quite a minor role in the book, but they showed that they cared about the other characters.
Yeah, I think it's something at the moment we certainly can't get enough of, and Yvonne has left a comment along those lines as well, that at this time it's really important to be able to connect with others and find ways to get together with like-minded people. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Australian rural fiction website and Facebook page has gone so well, because we're all just trying to find that commonality between us.
And it's given the people a place to do it. And, you know, I haven't ever analysed the number of comments and posts of a day, but it's a busy place. You know, there's always somebody saying, oh, I just read this great book, or can anyone recommend me something, or an author will put up, you know, books on special. It's just dynamic. It's going really, really well.
It is. And Tracy agrees that the thing about rural romances and rural stories is that sense of community that is so comforting right now. Now, there's a question here from Cassie, and it's a fantastic question, and it's one I want to know the answer to as well. So I'll pop that up. That there is an incredible array of books behind you there, Annie, in the background. And her question is, some writers put out 1 or 2 books and then nothing more. What's the key to sustaining a long-term career as an author? Please tell us your secret.
Okay, Cassie, that is a great question. And there's only 12 books behind me, because I was very lazy this morning and I left the other 26 on my bookshelf in the living room.
38. Mine are 38 books.
This was delivered at 10 o'clock this morning, and actually the print copy actually arrived this morning. So my key, I am very fortunate in that I didn't start writing until after I retired. I was young. I retired young. And I had always had a dream and a passion of being an author. Since I was 4 years old, when my mum first took me into a library, I fell in love with books. I fell in love with story writing. I wrote a book when I was 11. I didn't write again until I was 33. And I wrote a short story when I was 33 that was published with the local writers group. Then I went back to university and did my dip ed, my masters, a couple of other things. What do you say? Climbed the greasy pole and became a high school principal. So that this dream of being an author was subsumed over the years, and, you know, willingly, by career, family, marriage, children, grandchildren, study, so that when I retired, a friend of mine said to me, you know, you've been working, I'm always driven, I've got to do something. Now that you've retired, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I've always wanted to write a Mills and Boon. I thought I could start with that, and thought, you know, I'll be published. And I joined the Romance Writers Association of Australia. I joined the 50K in 30 days sprint rooms back in 2011, I think that was. And that first book got picked up by Entangle Publishing after it was rejected by Mills and Boon, who told me that my secondary characters were too strong. So when I actually received that letter from Mills and Boon in the post, in an envelope with a stamp, 6 months after I'd subbed it to them, Holiday Affair, which was that first book that I'd written for in the Romance Writers Sprint Room, was ranked at number 360 on Amazon US, and I got to be the number one author in romance series on Amazon US with my first book, which was absolutely mind-blowing for me because I just wanted to write a book. I had no idea of being a best-selling author or anything. So that fired my enthusiasm to keep going. That first book was part of my first racy novel, thanks Trish Welsh. It's hot. That's what Entangle wanted. It's no longer hot. I've made it one of my sweets. But I learned very quickly that if you were disciplined and structured and worked very hard with a set word count every day, that you could achieve a book in a couple of months. I've now written, I think at last count it was 38, but I've now written Cherry and Odessa, and I'm starting Sienna, and Hidden Valley is underway. So I'm probably up to 42 books in 10 years now. And that, Cassie, is because of absolute discipline and structure. However, that being said, a lot of other authors who find it quite difficult to have that structure have children at home, have a job, a day job. They have commitments with children's sport and things like that. If I want to, I can stay at my desk from 5:30 in the morning till midnight that night, and my wonderful husband will cook my meals and I'll do the house about once a week. But I'm very focused in getting that word count out and have, like I said, a very supportive husband. Children are grown, grandchildren are growing, and I don't work, and I can sit, well, I do work, but my work is my writing. So that's the secret. The other thing is, Cassie, you have to be disciplined. You have to ignore the evils or resist the evils of social media, of email, all of those things, and put your head down and write.
She left a comment a little while back saying 38, she's dying. I wonder if we've actually killed her now that we know it's 42.
42 now, she's probably disappeared. No, a lot of those are quite short. Some of those are only 45,000 words, sure. Whereas books like Whitsunday Dawn and Undara are up around the 110, 120, and I think Osprey Reef was about 135. But I love writing those longer books because it lets you get those intricate plots and patterns going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my math is not my strongest point, but that's nearly 5 books a year if you average it out over the time.
Well, it is. My first year I was writing 2 and 3. I've written 12 this year, which is a big year for me. I've released 12 books this year.
Okay. I feel like I need to crawl into a hole somewhere now.
The Pentecost Island series that's behind me, they're only 45,000 words, and it's a positive of COVID for me. It means I haven't been going out to author lunches. We weren't able to go away for our 3-month research trip in winter because the borders were closed, and we just stayed home, and I was focused and sat at my desk. And in a way it was good for me because a lot of authors I know are having problems being inspired with the way things are. We're fairly lucky up here on the North Coast because we're not as confined as what you are in Sydney and Melbourne. But being able to escape the news and reading about COVID all the time and immersing myself in my writing pushed that worry to the back burner a bit.
Yeah. I think Claudine's referring here to the fact that you mentioned that some of them are shorter novels. It still is 40 books, though. And we have successfully killed Cassie. Sorry, Cassie. But she does have a follow-up question. When you talked about your discipline and setting a word count, can she ask what your daily word count is?
Okay. I try to do 2,000 every day. Sometimes I get sidetracked because, as you know, I've got the rural fiction page. I spend at least 2 to 3 hours every day marketing my books, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, email, newsletters, even interacting on Facebook, which is not terribly evil, and talking to readers, to me, is marketing. Mm-hmm. I tend to get myself sidetracked, and I haven't done my 2,000 from yesterday yet, so I'll have to do 4,000 today. My best day ever was 10,000. which I wouldn't like to do very often because I could barely move with my neck and my fingers the next day.
Yeah, I've done one 10,000 word stint, and it just about killed me.
And emotionally, I had an interesting question. We've got visitors at the moment, and my friend said to me, I have trouble keeping track with all of your characters in these Pentecost Island books. I really need to make notes. How do you go? And I said, well, they're real people to me. I just know who they are and who they married and what they're doing and what their jobs are, because you become so emotionally invested in your characters. I think that's one of the keys to writing quickly, because you're doing action and dialogue, and that just goes, it makes the word count grow quickly.
And Cheryl's left the comment that discipline and structure, that's the teacher in you, perhaps.
That's the teacher in me. I didn't go to teaching till I was 39, but the same as with my writing. I've got one of these dreadful A-type personalities. Whatever I have to do, when I was in primary school, I had to be top of the class. I had to get the best mark in assignments. So when I became a teacher at 39, I went, okay, I want to go up the promotions trail, and I was a principal when I was 51. So it took me 12 years to get from first year out to a principal, which was crazy. And that's why I retired, because it was very tough work. But the same with my writing career. I really want to make a success of it now that I had that first book that I totally didn't expect to be successful. And it was just that catalyst that's kept me going. And, honestly, I've put in a very, very big year this year. I've missed our research trip. Next year, we want to head off to Cooktown, hopefully, if COVID behaves itself and Australia stays in the direction that it's going now. But I think, I might ease back. I certainly won't be writing 12 books again next year. I don't think. Don't quote me on that.
I won't. But a couple of the audience members have had a go at me now because of this. Now, the first one is from Trish, saying, come on, Sandy, time to increase your output.
Sorry.
And Cheryl as well. Yes, get going, Sandy. So that little corner I might have to crawl into, I think.
Look at this lovely Friday book bites that Sandy's doing. That's got to be time consuming, all the planning and organising of that and the technology.
I wish I could just blame that for my slowness. There are
it's called life.
Now, you've touched on this, and this is the burning question that I've wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you go on a research trip every winter, and you and I are quite different in our approaches. My small towns are fictional towns, whereas you use real Australian places and towns to set your stories in. And you do go away, I think it's every year you go away on these research.
This is the first winter that we've had at home on the North Coast since 2012. So it was very, very difficult to cope with the cold of the mid-North Coast through winter, because we're normally up in Darwin, 37 degrees on North Queensland. And the downside was that we were home in the cold. The upside was that the word count just went gangbusters. But, we did miss our trip. We've been 2012, we did Kakadu. 13, we did Daintree. 14, we did the Kimberley and Wyndham in Western Australia. 15 was the Whitsundays. Can't remember where the next 2 years were. We went down to Victoria. I still haven't written a Victorian book. Then we went back to the Whitsundays in 2018 for the launch of Whitsunday Dawn, which was one of the most special moments of my career, to launch it there and have a lot of people who knew the region really well. And then we did Undara on the way back from Western Australia, the Daintree, so many places to see. So this year I've seen my study.
Indeed. So apart from the fact that I'm kicking myself for not following your footsteps here, and I can't travel to my fictional towns because they're inside my head, I wanted to ask you, with all of those trips that you've done throughout so many wonderful places in Australia, is there a takeaway that you have learned from that in terms of Australian people or Australian places? Is there kind of one universal truth that you've discovered?
I think we can't say that I don't think like city and rural people aren't different. I think we have this Australian personality that you might find in the streets in George Street in Sydney, that you will find in a Saturday market in Mosman up in the Daintree. Australians, we have this unique Australian personality that I remember learning about when I did my first degree, about the egalitarian larrikinism of the Australian bushy, probably it was at the time. But I don't think that we can limit that to rural areas. I think, we all have this same, so I'm trying to say, getting a bit confused here. We have this same approach to life, and we have the same issues whether we live in a little town out of the back of Bourke or in Newtown in Sydney. We just do it within a different environment. And as I said before, I think people perceive that the rural environment might make things a little bit easier, as you said too, Sandy, because of community and support. But again, I think, don't you find COVID has changed that? People are getting to know each other in their apartment blocks and things like that.
Yeah, I think it has. It's probably possibly the only upside of COVID, I think, is that, we're forced now to look a little bit closer within.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's been like that. So, yeah, I think it's that a unique Australian personality is what I was trying to get at. It's just everywhere you go.
Excellent. Now we're going to start wrapping it up. There's a couple of more questions coming through which I will put up. While I'm doing that, I'm going to add the details of where you can find Annie online. Now, obviously, with 42 books under your belt, I couldn't do a graphic with all 42 books on there. So that's just a sampling of some of your books, but there are Annie's contact details if you want to find her online. Suzanne, yes, has a question. That is, how do you remember the details and settings when you are back at home?
Okay, details of setting is because I am an absolutely avid photographer. I take thousands of photos wherever I go, and when I'm writing a particular scene, and the last time I did that was in Andara, I was actually down in the caves with the photos up on my big screen as I was writing the scenes with the snake tracks through the dust and everything. Osprey Reef, as I was writing it, I actually went on a boat out in the Whitsundays on a boat exactly the same. And not only did I take photos of the saloon and everything that features quite a lot, I was down in the cabins and the toilets and the bathrooms and the steps and the lazarette where they keep things. So I have a very visual representation in front of me of my settings. And what was the other? Historical details?
The historical details, yeah.
Having my history degree, I take copious notes of my historical research. Again, with my planning, I take lots of notes and I never look at them again. They seem to stay in my head unless I might need to check a particular fact that I've picked up. I do a lot of time, I spent a lot of time in Alice Springs Library when we were out in the centre last year with some fantastic primary source material that you can't get online, that you have to get in print, and they kindly let me photocopy quite a portion of that. So the historical research, I have printed material to support it as well.
Mm-hmm. And our last question, because we will have to clock off in a second, from Bev, is she loves that you include an environmental issue in those bigger books that you have. Is that a particular passion of yours?
Bev, that's an excellent question. I say when I go to my library talks, I am not an environmentalist. I'm not what you'd call a greenie. I am an Australian who loves our country, our pristine landscapes. I accept that there are times when, due to the economy, we have to do certain things within these landscapes, but there are ways that we can get around that. I want to raise the awareness of what we need to do. For example, my book Diamond Sky, my heroine was an engineer who was in charge of the rehabilitation of the landscape after the diamond mining. I visit the issues that some of these industries create for the landscape. And I think for me, it is a passion in that I want to raise awareness of our beautiful country. And I've got lots of international readers now who just say, oh, I've got to come and visit because you painted this picture of these places for me. So, yeah, it is a passion.
Australian tourism should have you on the payroll, perhaps.
Hey, Whitsunday Tourism sponsored my launch of Whitsunday Dawn up on the beautiful jetty in the at the Coral Sea Resort because they said I brought so many people to the Whitsundays with Whitsunday Dawn. Sure. It was fantastic.
Excellent. All right, we might leave it there, Annie, because I know you've got another 12 books to write by Saturday. And
I'll just say one more thing. You put up my website there. If you go to my website, I've got a store. And for those people who are waiting for Hidden Valley will unfortunately not be in the stores, but it is on my online store, annieseaton.net. If you go to that and go to store, and anyone who buys any books off there today from this, if you email me first, I'll give you a discount voucher for a 15% discount on any of the books that you might like to order off the store.
Oh, that's a fantastic offer. Thank you so much, Annie. And thank you for joining me today. It's been lovely to speak with you. We were hoping to see each other this year when I was on tour, but of course the tour got cancelled. So maybe next year we'll get to see each other.
Next year, we'll do this a lot.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks so much for having me, Sandy. It was great to catch up again. And thank you to everyone who tuned in.
Thank you, guys. And I will see everyone next week. And thank you again, Annie, for your time today. See you later.
Bye-bye.